Welcome back to Playing the Game, episode 12. Thank you so much for listening. This episode, I sit down with Tybar. He owns the Athletes Physio, which has 2 studios here on the Gold Coast, and we go through all things prevention, rehab, exercises, the keys to living a not only athlete fit life, but a general fit life. I honestly think you guys are going to enjoy this so much. If you're an athlete, if you're not an athlete, if you just want to listen to me talk for 60 minutes. But I appreciate you watching. Like, subscribe, share, tell someone, comment. I appreciate your support and enjoy this episode. If you could pick any sport to be the GOAT at, what sport would you choose and why?
Man, I think my first love is basketball, so I would have to choose basketball. Why? I'm not sure, but I think the spectacle of an NBA game is something that's incredibly different to what most other sports offer, like very small, sort of intimate seating arrangement and everything like that. So I think that's really cool as opposed to potentially a footy game. Everyone's a bit spread out. The roar of the crowd's obviously amazing, but you know, the show that goes with an NBA game is something that's unmatched by, I don't think, many other sports in the world. The light show, the fire, the everything. I think it would have to be the GOAT of basketball, the NBA, for sure.
All right, let's go. Who's your GOAT in basketball then?
It was LeBron James.
It was? Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, it was LeBron James. So the reason I say was is my firm belief. I idolized LeBron James as I was growing up, playing basketball, try to base a game or take as many pieces of that as you can off him. But I'm a firm believer in win as a champion and lose like a champion. So I was really disappointed when in the playoffs several years ago, he walked out of the stadium prior to the game ending and them getting knocked out. So that means when the final buzzer went off, he was not there to shake hands with the opponent. So he was my GOAT. I lost a lot of respect, and look, I still think he's an amazing player, and I just can't see past that. You win like a champion, you lose like a champion. You shake hands after the match and you say, you were the better man today and thank you. You know, so I'm conflicted.
Yeah, that's a good point. Was that the Warriors, that one?
I can't remember. I'm heartbroken.
Yeah, I tried to erase it. I remember that. I remember it was a big deal at the time as well. A lot of people were sort of saying, ooh, like what? Like it's not hard. I think was it Isaiah Thomas was in The Last Dance. Isaiah Thomas did it to Michael Jordan, I think it was, and then that was pretty much started the rivalry between them. He's like, I took that personal. So it's interesting that you talk about that happened to Jordan, that spurred him on, and then LeBron comes and does the same thing. Does that mean Jordan's your GOAT, or you have one? You just don't not choose one.
Yeah, I'd still say I'm an undercover LeBron fan.
Yeah.
But look, there are stories that he did shake hands after the game in the tunnel. To me, that's not the same thing. That is not the same thing. You do it. If you're prepared to win in front of the lights, you lose in front of the lights too.
It's like that. Why did you want to become a physio?
I think everyone's physio story is very similar. Being a young fella, playing every sport known to man, injuries crop up. And I had an amazing physio while I was growing up from sort of the age of 13 to 18, actually past 18, down in Melbourne. And she was just such a great mentor for me, and she had all the right answers. I'd come with an ankle injury, and then I'd come with a knee injury, and then my wrist, and then my hand. Sort of everything she always had an answer for. And I went, wow, what an amazing way to, obviously I was a very keen athlete, still be a part of a competitive environment and playing sport as an adult. And obviously my first love was basketball. My other passions are helping people, and what better way to mix the two of those together than to, one, help people getting back to the sport that they love and competing in. So that's sort of why I became a physio. I thought it would be a really cool way of having a profession where we can sort of help people get back to playing sport.
What do you think most people get wrong around injuries and sport, or it might even be sport, just injuries in general?
I think timeframes. Yeah, timeframes to return to sport. Most people will return undercooked. What that means is there's still a high injury risk or risk of re-injury. So the hardest thing to know is, are you actually ready? So as a physio, there's so many different things or tricks that we use to figure out if someone's actually ready, whether that's functional testing, capacity testing, whether that's objective measures, whether that's questionnaires. Everything sort of comes together into forming what sort of risk the athlete has and relative risk to them returning to sport today versus tomorrow versus next week. So I think, circling back to your question, a big thing is don't go back undercooked, because you're going to let your team down, and they're the ones that you're worried about most of the time. You're going to let yourself down because that's what you're worried about most of the time. So make sure that the medical staff's on board. Make sure that everyone is in on the decision, because that's going to give you and the team the best outcomes.
Do you think the standard in professional sports, like the time frames that they go back, I think like ACL injuries, for example, I think they're starting to go back a little bit faster than they have been before, so people see that and it's like, well, Brian Pappenhausen came back in this amount of time, for example. Do you think that's sort of setting an unrealistic expectation? Like, people don't see the work that goes on behind there. Like, that's their full-time job every single day to do that. So you look at your 16, 17, 18-year-olds like, oh, well, they're doing that. But I don't think they understand the work that actually goes in for them to get to there. Do you think that's an issue?
Yeah, 100%. I have that conversation weekly. Yeah, weekly. So once every week or two, I get a new referral for an ACL. And they see on the news that their favourite footy player or a footy player or this person returned back from an ACL 6 months post-operation. And they go, can I do that too? The answer is yes, but. Right? So yes, but. Yes, but a professional athlete has access 24/7, 7 days a week to medical staff. They have access to the most recent evidence. They have access to the best equipment, the best professionals, the best advice. They have people there 24/7. So if an athlete comes to me and says, hey, can I get back in 6 months' time? I say, yes, we can, but we need to fill out a team that involves this, that, the other. And then usually they go, oh, okay, too hard, too much. A realistic time frame for that ACL injury would be anywhere above 9 months' time. So in reality, I've returned people at 9 months, but the reality is that the evidence says the longer that we wait, the better the outcomes are, or the reduced incidence of re-injury are. So that 12-month mark is the sweet spot, and then every month after the 12-month mark, that re-injury rate decreases and decreases and decreases. So in reality, it's better to rush things and have quality and quantity of open chain exercises rather than potentially rushing back.
What's an open chain exercise?
So open chain exercise is something that is sport specific. So think about a closed chain exercise as a bicep curl or potentially kicking a ball. Mm-hmm. Open chain exercise would be a drill. So a training drill, whether you're doing some wrestling or some tackling or some straight line, chasing or change of direction. So open chain is just something that's going to challenge you similar to your sport, where you have to react to the external environment. So on that, yes, we can return faster than expected. Is it really going to do you any benefit? Likely not. And the people that we idolize that are getting back within those 6 month parameters are people that their livelihoods depend on it. So Ryan Pappenhausen or any footy player, there's a dollar figure to it, and they got to get back because they won't get X amount And they're willing to take that risk as well, an educated risk to get back. Whereas a local footy player that's, trying to crack into A grade or trying to crack into Q Cup or whatever for the following year, risk versus reward, so often it's not worth it until you're at least that 9-month mark, if not that 12-month mark.
Do you think there's more ACL injuries occurring? I know in the NRL it's been a big talking point, but I'm not sure if it's because of the big name players getting injured that we're noticing it more, or if it's that there are more. Like, what about the clients that you're working with? Do you see it more, the same, less?
Look, I'd have to check the evidence to back that up. I know what we did see last season in both AFL, NRL, and NBA. The three sports that I follow the closest, big name athletes were injured a lot. I don't know why. I don't know what's in the water. Whether it's ACL, whether it's something else, big name players were out for a lot of last season. But I have read evidence to suggest that actually incidence rate is decreasing, particularly in the NRL, year by year. Incidence rate of injury is decreasing. However, we're just seeing it in our star players, so it's more of a punch factor. It's more of it's in the news, it's in the headlines that this player's missing and they're going to miss a year or this, that, the other. So I can certainly tell you unequivocally that male versus female athletes, the evidence states that they are at a much higher incidence rate of an ACL injury compared to a male athlete. But comparatively, in terms of leagues and whatnot, I would have to look up the evidence on that. Not sure.
I did read that study. I think you follow NRL Physio. Sorry,
yeah,
and
he's the man.
He is. That stat he put up about the ACL, the female versus males. Yeah. That blew my mind. I didn't realize the difference was so large.
Yeah, so it's multifactorial, but a large part of the evidence is an ACL injury typically occurs in a valgus movement of the knee, which means that the knee caves inward. Women, compared to men, physiologically have wider hips, so they have a wider carrying angle. Therefore, there's more play for those knees to cave in, as opposed to a male who's got quite rigid hips and typically has thick thighs. So there's nothing to there's no space to often cave. And when they do, it's usually in about 30 degrees of knee flexion. So a little bit of knee bend, a little bit of internal rotation causes that ACL to rupture. But yeah, unfortunately, women have a wider angle of their hips, and it's because they're amazing and they give childbirth. It's a physiological adaptation of their body to give birth. So it's a special thing, but also we have to be aware of it and try and strengthen and overcome their risk factor.
Let's touch on your telling me before about how you managed to go over to college. You're must have been a pretty decent basketball player. Tell me about what you learned going over to a college environment, whether it was while you're playing, whether it's like technology, whether it's the training. What were some of the things that stood out for you on that journey?
Exposure to life. I'm very fortunate that I had the opportunity to go over there as a boy and come back as a young man. So I moved over at 18. It's a bit embarrassing, but I'd never really grocery shopped for myself before. I'd never really done laundry. I'd never really done chores because my excuse while I was here in Australia was I've always been too busy and running around and playing basketball and studying and doing this and doing that. When I got over there, the lessons I learned were so valuable for me to become a man and to open a bank account, as silly as it seems, in another country, and to not have any family or friends around, and to have a time difference and, fend for yourself. That is the most valuable lesson that I could have ever learned. And I highly encourage all of my young athletes that I work with, whether they want to play semi-professional, whether they want to play amateur, which would be college sports, chase that dream and go do it and move away and go live your life and grow and nurture yourself into who you want to become rather than staying at home and waiting for an opportunity. So, one, exposure to life, But two, the way that America, certainly in basketball, trains is vastly different to the way that we train here in Australia. And I'm not sure which one's better, but I do know the end product often is better in America than it is in Australia. So the way I'd like to compare it would be a Kobe Bryant analogy. So he would work out at, let's say, 4 a.m., then he would go have some breakfast, and then he would go back and work out at 7 or 8 a.m., then he would go about his day, and then he would come back for team practice. So he would stack sessions on sessions on sessions over years and years and years, and that's why he became so good. What I found is I was one of the best sort of junior basketballers in Victoria at the time when I moved over, but my whole life between sort of 13 to 18, you train with your team 2 hours on a Tuesday, 2 hours on a Thursday, so 4 hours total, and then you have a game or two on the weekend. Compared to people in America, high school kids, they are playing 2 hours Monday to Friday. They might have 2 or 3 games a week. So over those 13 to 18 years, so 5 years, I've practiced 4 hours a week. They've practiced 10. You stack that up over weeks. You stack that up over years, and the wins and the reps that they have got is insurmountable to what I have got here in Australia. Now, I trained extra. I did extra to get to where I was, but I got over there, and I was like, man, these guys are fast. These guys are strong. These guys are so much better prepared for what we're getting put through than what I am. So that was a huge wake-up call. Huge wake-up call, my first training. Oh, my goodness.
What position did you play?
I played point guard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you find over there, I guess, just positionally, was it like, did you just size of the thing? Was it just the training, the reps? Or do you think there was a sort of any other differences like nature versus nurture? Are they just sort of physically gifted, or it's just like they've been putting in the work for that long that they've just sort of got a leg up?
Yeah, it's definitely both. It's definitely both. So to put in perspective, my first college that I went to, we trained 4 hours a day on court, and then every other day we would lift for an hour, hour and a half. So Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., we're on court training, 4 hours a day. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we lift, and then we might have 2 or 3 games that week as well. So not only are the guys over there physically gifted, extremely talented, but they're also durable. And unfortunately, that's what let me down. I was not as durable as the rest of them, and then that ended up why I had an injury, and then that's ended up why I lost my scholarship, because I was injured and I was no good to the program or to the business, if that makes sense.
Are they doing exercises to prevent injury? When you talk about durable, are they know that their livelihoods are on the line, so they're doing the prehabs, or is it just some of them just get lucky?
Luck. Yeah, luck. So I compare, and this is not throwing stones. I compare what I know now to what I knew then, and whatever my strength coach at college was telling me, 10 years ago, was gospel and was the best thing ever. But I look at the way that we trained, and I looked at our progressive overload, and then I look at what the human body is capable enough, and I guess their machine is big enough that they can churn and burn athletes. But I truly believe that the way that we were training was not the best way. Do I know the best way to train? Absolutely not. I'm not saying that, but I know that there is better ways to train on a wide scale, and that would probably give our athletes a better chance of having professional careers. Because I think at the end of the day, we all know someone who could have been a star, but they got hurt. And it depends how they got hurt as to why. It depends on how they got hurt as to what they were predisposed to. But I suppose if the training was better, we would lose less athletes.
Summing that all up, if there was one thing you could teach someone who's coming through, who might not be exposed to that environment that you were gifted to be able to experience, what would you tell them?
In most cases, hard work trumps talent. but you also need to be calculated when you work hard.
Okay. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So for every 1 minute that you spend planning, you save 6 minutes of work. So for every hour that you spend planning, you save 6 hours of work. So what I'm saying is go to the gym with a plan and then go execute. Don't show up to the gym and go, shit, what am I going to do today? And then you waste 15 minutes and then you get some shot. You're going hard, but make sure you go in there with a calculated plan and then execute it and work really hard. Don't just be the guy that shows up and just works hard. Be very calculated about your moves.
What's the most common injury or checkup that you get as a physio?
So the two most common joints that I deal with day to day, largely attributed to the sports that I work in, so rugby league and CrossFit, are ankles and shoulders. And in all honesty, in most cases, it comes down to instability. So instability within the ankle or the shoulder joint is why most people have the problems or why most people come and see me. Basically, it comes down to a lack of capacity for what we're putting the joint through.
Let's start with the shoulder. Mm-hmm. So if I was someone, assuming either CrossFit or league or any sport, what are some prehab exercises or warm-ups that I could be doing to make sure that I'm not getting injured as much?
Rugby league players first.
Okay.
So much emphasis for the boys that I work with is how they look in the mirror. Everyone loves to do the bench press, right? And sometimes it's the only reason why the boys will get to the gym. But I think if we could alter their mindset and go, how much of a priority is my bench press as compared to my external rotation strength? In reality, the external rotation and internal rotation strength is far more functional and far more risk adverse than doing a bench press. So if we could just alter how much influence the bench press is giving to our training session as opposed to holistic health of the shoulder, I think that our players would be far better equipped to go through a game of rugby league without any injury concerns. Now, I do think that bench press is an important exercise, but I do think that if we threw in some posterior cuff exercises like a external rotation under load, a lateral raise, a bent over row, a face pull, a pull up, a shrug, those all in combination would give us a pretty sturdy foundation for that shoulder to then go and throw at someone or to then go and wrestle someone, take them to the ground. I think that would be a better foundation than just doing bench press, incline bench press, decline bench press, some flies, and then that's it. Call it a day.
Oh, don't forget some bicep curls.
Bicep curls are very... You know what? Bicep curls are actually very, very important for rugby league.
Okay.
Obviously, a lot of the movement is pulling towards us. So it's kind of funny, but it is true. Our players do need to be doing them.
If you could give 5 exercises, might be limited, you might be like, I need more, but 5 exercises that a rugby league player specifically would need to do in a gym, what do you reckon those 5 most beneficial for, I guess, output on the field as well, but then also injury prevention?
Yeah, so let's break it down to just the shoulder. Yep, so just the shoulder. Let's go a pull-up pull-up number 1. Bent over row or rowing variation, number 2, but I like a bent over version because obviously we have the added benefit of trunk stability in there. An incline press, because if you're thinking about it, when we're running and trying to absorb contact, it's never in this complete sagittal plane. It's always almost above our shoulder height. When we're going in for a tackle or when we're fending someone, we're almost on a tilt running forward. So pushing forward, I think an incline bench is more bang for buck. Let's throw in some bicep curls because everyone loves them, but they are very functional in that pulling capacity. And then to round it out, we'll do some rotator cuff cable work. So internal, external rotation. I know that's kind of a two-prong exercise
Little
there.
superset.
Yeah, but we can go some full range internal and external rotation. So what that means is cable above our head, internally rotating to down below our hip, getting our trunk involved. And then same thing, cable below our hip, going all the way up to above our shoulder. So that would be our full range, full spectrum resistance, internal and external rotation. So bang for buck, you put me on the spot there, but those are our 5 best shoulder exercises to help bolster some stability on the anterior, inferior, and superior side and posterior side of that shoulder.
Love that. I'm all about practical exercises here. I want to make this as practical as possible. Would you switch it up for someone who doesn't do the rugby league or the contact sport if they're looking to strengthen the shoulder, just a gym goer, just your sort of average to semi-average Joe who's in the gym quite a lot? Would you still recommend the same exercises and precautions, or they should be focusing on different things?
Strength training. So those exercises are going to be great and in most cases safe to do for almost everyone, unless they have an injury concern in their shoulder. Great exercises for everyone to be doing. I would also tailor it towards their goals. So let's say that their goal is to do X. We're going to base those exercises on achieving X. Whereas the exercise I gave before were more so about bolstering the stability of that shoulder to then impact in a tackle or wrestling or, absorbing contact when you're falling to the floor, getting tackled. So yes, great exercises, but it's going to depend on whatever their goal is, what we're going to program for them.
All right, the shoulders are sweet, they're feeling good, their fens are good. Mm-hmm. What about the ankles? What are some things you can make sure that we're doing there?
Yeah, so making ankle stability as functional as possible. So in the early stages of rehab, of course, we're going to do our closed chain exercises. We're going to do our calf raises, dorsiflexion, inversion, eversion. So just moving our ankle under resistance all ways that it can go. But then once we start to build that capacity, we definitely want to transition more into what's functional. So open chain, whatever their sport is, let's say it's rugby league, whatever's functional for that sport. So that can be pogos, that can be jumping, that can be running, changing direction. And then obviously in rugby league, we have people grabbing on our ankle and turning it and twisting it. So we need to make sure that it can be strong enough to overcome someone landing and turning it, but then also be able to get up and then be powerful and run off and, keep playing from there.
What do you think most people get wrong around the rehab process?
I think that people often emphasize the wrong things. So if we rule out severe injuries, so dislocation, subluxation, complete rupture or tear, what are we getting wrong is people not moving straight away. So if we have a mild to moderate injury, we want to encourage people to mobilize as tolerated. The best evidence shows that promotion of range of motion and promotion of blood flow to an injured area is going to really help make that structure feel better, help you function faster, and help you get back to doing what you want to be doing faster.
This is finding that balance. We spoke about earlier how people go too fast and they see the top level and it's like, oh yeah, I gotta get there. But then you see other people who sort of don't do anything, like, oh, just sort of let it heal. So I guess it's sort of trying to gradually get better and better and better without sort of stretching it too far.
Absolutely, yeah. Progressive overload. So same as any type of training, we want to progressively overload back to where we want to be. For rehab, nothing changes, but oftentimes people stall or immobilize when not necessary because they're in pain, and that's a normal human response. But it's our job to educate them and to help them step by step getting back to walking without a limp and then running without a limp and then changing direction and then sport-specific drills after that.
Sport has so many factors that cross over into life, and I think progressive overload is one of them where we could use it more. It's like you start off pretty shit at something and then you slowly get better and you slowly get better. It's sort of like a diet. You start there and you hate it, but then you get better and, oh, I'm getting more defined, get them abs. I think there's so many different areas of life where we could sort of try progressive overload. It's not just in the gym, or it's not just getting better. It's like anything, any skill that you want to get better at, you just have to get a little bit. I read Atomic Habits the other day, and he calls it the Goldilocks zone, and he talks about when you sort of try a new habit, if it's really easy, you're going to hate it. But if it's really hard, like you go and start playing tennis, you play against Rafael Nadal, then you're going to hate it. And similar, the injury, like if you're not doing anything, then it's not going to work. But if you go overboard, it's also not going to work. So it's about finding that sort of middle ground for you that works to help you going to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's applicable to anything. You want to progressively overload almost everything in your life. You don't want to just jump right in and do an hour of something you hate right away, or you think that's going to benefit you right away. You don't just jump in an ice bath for 15 minutes your first time.
Yeah,
right? That's not good for you, by the way. But you have to progressively overload. Your first time in an ice bath might be 20, 30 seconds because you have to get your body accustomed to it.
You an ice bath? You got a morning routine going?
Honestly, I'm such a wimp when it comes to cold. I had one this morning.
Ooh, nice. Try and pump up for the podcast.
Yeah. I'm running on ice bath and coffee, baby. Let's go. No, not often. I would rather get other things right than just an ice bath. I do think it's a nice adjunct to overall health, but I would far rather prioritize other things that will give us some more benefit. Not saying that it's a bad thing. Saying that if it works for you, amazing, go for it, rip in, love it. But there's definitely some other things that I'd like to touch on in this podcast that will probably give you some really good bang for buck.
That was my next question.
Sweet.
Outside of the actual rehabbing process, what else is there that people can do?
Sweet. So I've got a list, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Me sort of reading off.
Yeah, let's go.
A list, and then basically I'll touch on every point and try and use a little bit of evidence to sort of back that up and rationale why an athlete might want to do this as opposed to something else. Cool. So some other things that I think are really beneficial for, one, preventing injuries, but also two, just having a better quality of life. Strength training, sleep, relative recovery prior to training or games, your mental state, and then being consistent with your training is that last one to round it out. So I'll start off with the strength training component, and then compare it to sort of rugby league and what we're doing right now. So a couple of days ago in the Burley BMD chat, we put up some WNRL signposts of sort of baseline measurements of a battery of tests that we're going to run in pre-season, and we're comparing ourselves, our athletes in BMD are comparing ourselves to the gold standard for WNRL.
Just for anyone who doesn't know, BMD is the level under NRLW, so it's that sort of stepping stone to get up there. So that's a lot of, they're aspiring to get to that next level. Yeah,
so a lot of our athletes will hopefully go on to play in the WNRL. But essentially what we're doing is a battery of tests, so some common ones that people might know, 1RM testing of bench press, squat, a 20-meter sprint test, and a bronco. So the best way an athlete can potentially compare themselves or reduce their rate of injury is to be testing well across the board, rather than just in your strength measures and you're terrible at running, rather than just being a fit athlete but you're not strong. Test well across the board. Try and be in that very good to excellent category for as many categories as you can. That absolutely, unequivocally will decrease your risk of soft tissue injury. Not contact injury, that's a completely different beast. But soft tissue injury, if you are in shape and in the top shape compared to your peers or your cohort, 100% you are going to live a good quality of life. You're going to have a reduced risk of injury. So there's no benefit, there's no bad side to being fit. There's no bad side to being one of the best.
Yeah.
So the next part is quite interesting. Sleep has been something that I think I certainly didn't prioritize when I was an athlete, and it's something that I have not prioritized in my first year of being a physio, but since then I have absolutely prioritized it, and it has made a world of difference in my life. So there's so many studies that support the efficacy of sleeping well, but one that I'd like to bring up right here is pertinent to athletes' hearing. And I'd like to read off some statistics. So this is a study done in 2014 by Malusky et al. But basically, it's over a 21-month period, so quite a long study of sleep. And I want you to keep in mind, this is not 5 hours in one night. It's 5 hours across every night across the week. So here we go with the statistics. So if you're an athlete that sleeps between 5 and 7 hours a night across a 21-month period, you have an increased incidence rate of injury at 65%. So 5 and 7 hours. Now, I would say that most athletes, if they do not prioritize their sleep, like I did, would fall within that category. Because guess what? We're hard workers. We wake up early. We stay up late. We do extras. So you're in that category. You're very likely to get injured. If you sleep for 8 hours, as opposed to 5 or 7, your incidence of injury decreases to 35%. If you sleep for 9 hours, your incidence of injury as an athlete decreases to 18%. So I'm not a mathematician, but the difference between 65 and 35% is incredible. And the difference between 65 and 18% is incredible. So that's not to say that one night a week you sleep for 5 hours because you get up at 4 a.m. to go do some extras or whatever. But overall, priority should be sleep as opposed to potentially getting up early to take that ice bath, or staying up late to do that sauna, or doing some extra mobility, or, we want to stack the wins across the week with sleep. It's something that I have certainly seen a change in my life. I probably teeter on that 7 to 8 hours now, and I sacrifice my sleep because I have a business to run. I'm still athletic. It happens. But if we could prioritize one thing over another, I would certainly try and prioritize our sleep, because it is one of the best ways to mitigate injury risk. Moving on from there, we've got relative recovery to training or game. So this is multifactorial, but I'd like to touch on a couple of things. So one, how are you fueling your body? I'm definitely not an expert in nutrition. However, are you eating the right things? Are you eating food that's going to nourish you, or are you eating KFC, McDonald's? Yeah, I've been guilty of KFC, McDonald's while I was an athlete, because it's convenient. You're in a rush. You're not prepared. But what is truly going to give you the best outcome is the proper fuel. The next part of that is hydration. Are you drinking enough water? And then part and parcel with that, are you having enough electrolytes? If you're drinking heaps of water but not having the required electrolytes, guess what? Your muscles aren't getting water transported into the muscles. So you're kind of not really getting the best bang for buck there. The next part of that is after your last training session, have you got a niggle? Have you got an injury? Have you had it looked at? Or are you just going to brush it off as nothing and then go compete again? All athletes are guilty of that. I was too myself. It is always best to just get someone to have a quick look over it before training and get the all clear, and realize that quick 5-second check-in that you have with your clinician or you have with your team doctor just before you go out could mean the difference between you playing on the weekend just by sitting out that, or playing the rest of the season. Then we've got our other sort of auxiliary forms of recovery. So activation, stretching, soft tissue work, massage, cupping, dry needling, and then fits in our ice bath and sauna. So I do think that should have some weight, and I do think that it is important. But it's multifactorial. There's so many different things that we need to think about. And if we are going to prioritize anything, I think the first thing should be strength training. The second thing should be our sleep.
I think one thing I took out of that is I work at a high school, rugby league focused, and the part where you talk about, okay, well, if I sit out this training session or this game, it might help me play the season or longer. And I think that's the difference, the importance of, being able to feel your body. And then it's also exactly that, feeling your body sometimes is, a lot of people don't want to be called soft. Mm-hmm. And it's such a strong point. Like, you don't want to let the team down, and you don't want to be that person, but it's like only you know. And then if you know that you're sitting out because you don't feel right, then you need to be okay with that, compared to like you're sitting out because you're being soft. It's like you got to be able to be the judge, and you can't let anyone else's opinion affect you on that, because it's up to you. I say Cam Smith, for example, he never got injured. He played that many games. Yep. And it's like, and you talk about it before, is like the ability to not get injured, or injury over a short period of time versus a long period of time, can be so important. It can be the difference. But it's hard. Everyone does it. I remember being young. Like, you couldn't stop me from playing. It was like, nah, 100%. I'll walk it off. I'll shake it off. It's all good. I'll play.
Correct. That's something I faced as an athlete. When I was overseas in Hawaii, if we sat out a training, we had to be dead. Like, we had to have a leg shot off. We had to have something super wrong with us. I remember rolling my ankle, and it hurt so bad. And the expectation on me was that I could not sit out. I had to keep going. Looking back, as a physio, that is so silly. Yeah. And I ran around, and that injury hung about for 6 weeks because I kept running it on it every day, jumping off it every day. It could have been gone. It could have settled down in 2 or 3 days if I had just had to let it rest. Like, it was just a little injury, just a little tweak, but it was hurting bad. Like, athletes are the best judge of their body. They know what's wrong. And as a health clinician, you have to listen to your athletes. And that's something that I think I've built a lot of trust with our footy boys, is previous physios at the club, they didn't trust, the boys didn't buy in, the boys didn't trust them, and they couldn't really open up and talk about what was actually going on. Our boys know that I'm never going to hold them out of a game if they believe that they can play, and we have run the proper objective testing to decide whether they can play effectively and reduce their risk of a serious injury. So a really nice thing that I have on my side is I've done silly things. I've been an athlete. I've run through walls. I've jumped over mountains. I've done it with a smile on my face. So I know what athletes are going through. I know how much it means for not only your physical health, but your mental health to then get up on a weekend and play. I know how excited players get for that. So I'm never going to take that away from someone unless it's to their own detriment.
You have a lot of knowledge. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and one of the reasons I wanted to chat with different people is because I want to learn heaps. Now I can go and I can share my knowledge on. Where do you get knowledge from? Like, is there any YouTube videos or books that might not be textbooks that physios understand, but people can get a basic insight, aside from obviously yourself and your page? But do you any other sources that are really helpful?
Look, I'm really lucky that I've had great mentors along the way, and mentors come and go in and out of your life depending on what stage of life you're in. It's funny how they show up. But I'm extremely grateful for 3 physio mentors in particular. The one I already spoke about when I was growing up, and then my 2 friends, Ben and Roland. They have taught me so much as a physio and as a businessman, and every single bit in between that. So yeah, I spent a lot of time on YouTube. I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts. I spend a little bit of time reading books. But life experience and talking to the people that you aspire to be like around you is probably the best tool you can use. So I speak to my old man a lot. My old man's had a lot of really successful businesses in his lifetime, his own amazing gyms. So I pick his brain every single week. We catch up for a coffee and a chat, and we talk about life, we talk about business, we talk about goals. So I don't know, just find whatever person or group of people you really respect, and ask them questions, man. Ask and ask and ask and be annoying. Ask.
Touch on business then. Let's talk about a lot of physio base. How was it deciding to jump all in and do business and, burn all the boats and make sure this worked? How's the business going and how was that venture?
Yeah, so business at the moment is going great. We've got 2 physios who are amazing. We've got Emma and Kerry. I'm so thankful to have them a part of my team. And then my fiance also does a lot of help with the admin side of things as well. So thanks to her as well. But basically, I've owned businesses in the past. They've all been pretty successful. However, they've led me on a journey to becoming a physio. So it was all while I was becoming a physio. So I'm kind of lucky that I've had business experience while studying, all knowing that it was going to lead to the goal of becoming physio, owning my own clinics. And then eventually that next goal is going to the top level of sport in Australia. What really made me just say, let's go for it, is I graduated. This is an unusual story. I graduated. I went for 8 job interviews. I got all 8 jobs as a new grad, but none of them felt right. So I went, I had good rapport with the people there, but it just wasn't it. I just didn't have that feeling where I was going to be excited to go to work every day. I didn't have that feeling where I was like, this is my community, this is where I want to be. They're all great places, but I thought I could do it better. I thought I could do it a different way because of my prior experience as an athlete and as a businessman. I thought maybe there's something here. So I spoke extensively about it to my old man, to my mentors who I mentioned before. My old man didn't think it was a good idea to start with, but he said, hey, give it a shot, I'll support you. So I went, right, I'm going to put an end date on this. So I gave myself 6 months, which is a pretty generous amount of time to not be really earning any income as someone who was already poor as a student. So I went, right, first things first, got to find a location, and I stumbled upon the Brotherhood and haven't looked back. They've been amazing. So thanks to Guy and thanks to Adam for having me there for the last 2 years now. It's been amazing. So set an end date and went, right, I'm going to write down a bunch of questions right now, and in 6 months I'm going to revisit these questions. And if the majority of these questions have insignificant or poor amount of evidence to continue, then I'll tuck my tail in, I'll swallow my pride, and I'll approach some of those places that offered me a job previously and say, hey, I tried my own thing, it didn't work out. I'm keen to learn, I want to grow. Thankfully, by that 6 month mark, most of my metrics were going pretty well, and I decided to persist with it. And I was really harsh on myself. I'm quite a harsh critic of myself. I have heaps of confidence in my ability, sometimes overconfident. But went for it. And that was 2 years ago now. And business is going well. We've got 2 locations on the Gold Coast, 2 incredible rehab facilities. So I'm incredibly grateful. I know I already mentioned the Brotherhood, but Aaron at Raw Iron, we're the fittest gym in the world. We literally just won the CrossFit Games, which is like literally the fittest gym in the world. And
Congrats.
we have such an amazing community at that gym, and such an amazing rehab facility as well. So I'm very thankful. I'm very grateful that I took a chance on myself, because I know it's going to end up where I want it to be.
Give me the biggest positive lesson and the biggest negative lesson.
The biggest positive lesson for me so far is that if you follow your dream, you will live your dream. And currently that's what I'm doing. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. It's not always easy. My alarm goes off some mornings. I'm like, oof, this again?
Snooze.
But I'm incredibly grateful to work with the people I work with, and I'm incredibly grateful that I'm following my passion. I'm involved in sport. I still play sport. I'm a part of it, and I can help people getting back to doing what they love. And as a kid, that was my goal. So my dream from 13 to now, almost 28, I'm following it and I'm loving it. My biggest negative, the hardest pill to swallow for me, is that not everyone's intentions are as good as mine. So I'm quite an optimistic person, and I often will see things at face value, not black. I'm very black and white. So if you tell me yes, I think that means yes. If you tell me no, I think that means no. And my lesson over the years, being a basketball coach, being an athlete, being a businessman, I really struggle when people don't meet my expectations of what I thought they said. Mm-hmm. So that's been a hard pill to swallow for me, and it's been hard to readjust my standards to what I expect of others sometimes, whether it be in social settings or business settings or whatever it is. But that's been probably a negative, or something that I'm constantly trying to readjust, reevaluate without compromising self.
I just want to say thank you for coming on. Really appreciate your time. Before we wrap up, is there anything I may have missed that you want to share with audience, athletes, physios, anyone?
The last thing that I want to sign off with is make sure you have a great community around you. I think I was fortunate when I was growing up to always have a team sport, or to have someone that I would consistently see every week, and that kept me going. Now that's my support crew, my mum, my dad, my stepmom, my fiance, my team, the footy club, the gym. That's what keeps me going. That's what gets me energized. That's what I wake up every morning knowing that I have responsibility to that community of people to do good. And I don't think, particularly in individual sports such as CrossFit and sports where, like rugby league, where you may be trying to get to that next level, people don't rely on their community enough, and then it becomes all about them when they've got great people around them that they can lean on. I certainly lean on my community often, and I think that if everyone did that, we would be stronger as one, as opposed to just trying to face it on your own.
Especially if you have that community at hand. I know I've spoken previously, and this is a key. Every last 4 weeks, we've all talked about community and how important it is to have the right people around you. And sometimes you might live in a space where you don't have that community that you sort of want to be around. So when you do have that community and you're able to access them, like it's such a superpower in a way, that you can have those people to talk to. And you spoke about so many people that have helped you, and what's the old saying? It takes a village to raise someone. So I think it's very important to utilize the people that you do have around you, because they probably want to help you just as much as you want to get helped by them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's finish off. What is your superpower?
Optimism. Yeah.
Nice.
Glass full.
Always. I love that superpower. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Where can anyone find you?
On Instagram, _the athletes physio. And I thought about this a little bit. If you made it this far into the podcast, I'd love to offer you a free treatment or assessment before the end of the year, so before end of 2024. So if you made it all the way, I'm very appreciative. Thank you for listening. Respect. Come in and see us. So thank you. And thanks so much, Jackson, for having me on.
Thank you. Might see you at Labrador next year.
Absolutely. Let's go. Go the Tigers.